chasing success for ourselves or for the glory of God. And I actually want to take us to another leadership lesson from Luke and actually go to Luke 22, verse 1 to 6. Now the feast of the unleavened bread called the Passover was approaching, and the chief priests and the teachers of the law were looking for some way to get rid of Jesus, for they were afraid of the people. Then Satan entered Judas, called Iscariot, one of the 12. And Judas went to the chief priests and the officers of the temple guard and discussed with them how he might betray Jesus. They were delighted and agreed to give him money. He consented and watched for an opportunity to hand Jesus over to them when no crowd was present. And I suppose I want to end on, we're talking about all these negative parts of success, and I kind of want to finish on this. The leadership lesson that I learned from this is, are we betraying anyone to further our career? Are we like Judas? He betrayed Jesus, his leader, so that he could further his career. He could get in and get some money, but also, appear famous and everything like that. Are we betraying? Are we gossiping? Are we saying bad things behind someone's back? Are we, that's what really actually jumped out at me is, I'm guilty of this. I've kind of talked badly about someone to make me look like I was in a better position than them or whatever. But we all know how that story ended. He ended up hanging from a tree, right? And betrayal always catches up with us. And so, Dr. Rod, how do we avoid getting caught up in betraying someone to try to force our own agenda?
I've given this one some thought, and look, I don't pretend to have the answer, but I think we have to settle in our own minds first. So firstly, we have to be agreed within ourselves that we are going to think well of people and also of the organization we work for. If we're employed by a board as, say, the CEO of a company, we're going to speak well and we're going to do well.
That's good. Think well, speak well, do well.
Think well, speak well, and do well.
I like it.
And look, I've used this idea usually when I'm teaching in the area of generosity. We often measure generosity, for example, by how much money we give to a cause, for example, but you're not expressing generosity unless you're thinking generosity.
Yeah.
Nor are you going to express generosity if you don't speak generosity. And I think this can apply to the context of organizations. We need to think generously about those around us.
Yeah.
We need to speak generously. In other words, if you can't find something good to say about someone, just don't say it.
Yes.
If it's negative, then find a way of broaching the subject with the person involved. And in the organizational context, do generously. So be generous with your time, your energy. In other words, be a fully engaged employee or colleague. I think that's probably the best way to guard yourself against becoming, as they say, a Judas.
Yes.
The term, of course, has entered the lexicon. We hear people say, well, there's a Judas in the camp. Sometimes people who are insecure say that kind of thing. But, we need also to understand, I think, or at least maybe speculate about what caused Judas to be open to the influence of Satan. The Bible says here, of course, in verse 3, then Satan entered Judas. Now, I don't know whether that happened literally or whether that's more like a turn of phrase to essentially say he was influenced by bad stuff rather than good stuff. But it appears as if he was very disappointed that Jesus didn't turn out to be who he thought Jesus was supposed to be.
Because he was
And
there for, because he thought if he was part of that group, Jesus was the one that was going to become king and everything like that. And
That's
so
right.
he was there for
Jesus
influence.
was going to upend
Yeah.
the order of the day.
Yeah.
Even though Jesus did teach that his kingdom was not of this world. And there were others too who I think had a similar expectation. So it may be, I don't think the Bible is all that clear on this, but it may be that what ultimately drove Judas to betrayal was disappointment in Jesus. He didn't turn out to be the leader he thought Jesus was going to be. And I've been party to, and actually I'm ashamed to say I've occasionally engaged in that kind of undermining of a leader, where we say, well, the leader didn't turn out to be the person we thought they were going to be, this, that, and the other thing. But it really is debilitating.
Yeah.
It's debilitating to you personally. It's obviously debilitating to the leader, and it's debilitating to the organisation. Honestly, if there are issues with the leader, you need to have them sorted out. One good trend in the whole sort of human resources management area these days is what they call 360-degree reviews, where you get an opportunity to review the senior management team, the senior leaders in your organisation. Use that wisely. And if the board, for example, are wise, they'll take that into account when they're doing their own annual or semi-annual review of their CEO. The other thing which has been around for a while now is what they call organisation climate surveys, where you're not necessarily looking at individuals, but you're having a look at you're really looking at what's going on with the culture of the organisation. So you can manage it sometimes through those ways. But I think at the end of the day, what drives us to gossip, other than pure envy, I think it is this mismatch between our expectations of the person whom we're undermining. The mismatch between our expectations and what they were actually able to deliver.
Yeah, it's quite powerful when we can. It goes back to that. What I was talking about is like trying to force the hand, right? Trying to kind of run ahead of God. That we need to leave God to kind of do his part, but we need to know what our lane is and what our purpose is and what our calling is, and understand that someone else may have a different calling. And if they're not following it properly, if we're in a certain position to address that, then we need to address that appropriately. But if not, we need to stick in our lane and just leave God to be able to deal with those. I mean, I've been in situations where I've, left poor leadership and tried to do my best not to talk poorly about those people, because that's God's domain. It's between, as David said to Saul, it's for God to judge between us who's right and who's wrong. And so I think that when you're very, very correct there, is the betrayal is a result. The betrayal isn't the cause, it's a symptom. The cause is the fact that there's something wrong there, and we feel like that's the only way that we can kind of get our justice or get our position. Because I know not every one of you out there are wanting to betray someone so that you can take over their position intentionally. It may just be that you're hurt by them. It may be that something that they're doing might actually be affecting you, and you don't believe that they're doing the right thing. Well, stick in your lane, report it to the right people that need to be reported to. Don't gossip, don't make things up. Maybe address it directly with the person to see if they can do better, because you don't want to be known as the person that betrays someone. Because we've mentioned this before about, the way someone leaves, the way someone enters somewhere is the way that they leave. And if someone enters in betrayal, then they're going to be exited by betrayal as well. But you don't want that label on you that that's someone that you can't trust. Because whether we're leading or being led, or in a subservient position, and if we have actually betrayed someone, it's very difficult to be able to get people's trust back. And so I think that as leaders, we need to make sure that we can build trust with the people below us and the people above us, so that we can be in good standing and have, about to say that word that Dr. Rod earlier said don't say, but influence. We can't influence someone if they don't trust us. And we influence not to be able to manipulate or influence them, but as Dr. Rod said, so that they can grow, to empower them, whether they're up the ladder run or down the ladder run. If people don't trust us, we have no influence. And if we as Christians want to be able to influence people for the kingdom, if people don't trust us, like most people have a distrust for Christians as a general, then how are we meant to witness for the King? How are we meant to introduce people to the love of Christ if they don't trust us? If we're just known as that deceitful snake that betrays people, and you don't want that person on your team, or you don't want that person leading you because they're just going to betray you to take all the glory for themselves or whatever, So, Dr. Rod, I really, really like those three statements. Think well, speak well, do well, and from that, the right culture should flow. Before we end, Dr. Rod, what last statements do you have around betrayal?
Well, in the end, it didn't work, did it?
No.
In the end, it didn't work because Jesus still fulfilled his purpose. And I think, for those of us who have been betrayed ourselves in the past, and I know many will in the corporate world and sometimes in personal life, just know this is not the end of the story.
That's good.
As indeed it was the case with Jesus. It wasn't the end of the story. It didn't mean he was thwarted in fulfilling his own purpose for coming to this earth. So if you're on purpose yourself, betrayal won't necessarily mean it's the end of the line for you. So, continue to focus on your purpose, the purpose that God has given you. Continue to trust in him. Trust that he gave you that purpose, and trust that he will open doors for you. He will see to it that you will fulfill your purpose. And you know what? If the going gets tough, and if you get cranky with God, or you get disappointed with God, then feel free to tell him, because I can guarantee it won't topple him off the throne, and he's heard it all before. Because if he hasn't heard it from you, he's probably heard it from me.
Hey, did you like that video? If so, give us a thumbs up and put a comment below and share your thoughts on the topic. This is an excerpt from our On the Cube Leadership podcast, and if you'd like to watch the full episode, please click through to check out our channel and consider subscribing, or watch the next video.